Imagine this. 3 generations. 3 different financial truths. 3 new promises of safety. Your grandparents were told to save. Your parents were told to buy property. You were told to invest. Each generation believed it had cracked the code to stability, that it had learned from the last. But every one of them ended up in the same place, trapped. Not because they were foolish, but because the definition of safety keeps changing its disguise. A bank account, a mortgage, a portfolio. Different words for the same illusion. The system never needs to trick people twice. It only needs to rename the trap. And as each generation adjusts, the rules shift just far enough to make yesterday's wisdom worthless. Every financial system is built on one fragile material, belief. In the mid-20th century, that belief was solid, almost sacred. Money meant work, savings meant virtue, and thrift meant survival. Your grandparents lived through wars, depressions, and ration books. They saw scarcity firsthand, so they equated safety with caution. Banks were temples of responsibility. Governments praised the saver as the backbone of society. Then came the post-war boom, the golden decades of the 1950s and 60s. Nations rebuilt, industries roared, and wages climbed. For the first time, ordinary people felt wealthy enough to plan for the future. Savings accounts were sold as both moral and prudent. The responsible man saved for his children, the reckless one spent. But history never leaves prosperity untouched. In the 1970s, inflation surged across the world. Oil shocks, deficit spending, and the collapse of the gold standard turned stable money into sand. Prices doubled, currencies halved, and savers discovered that their patience had been punished. The lesson was quiet but devastating. Money stored in the system could vanish without being stolen. That realization changed everything. The virtue of saving gave way to the obsession with owning. If money melted, people thought, then value must be placed in something real. Bricks, land, roofs. It was the birth of the second illusion. For your grandparents, the bank was sacred, order in a chaotic world. They had lived through the Depression or its aftermath, an era when debt was shameful and cash was king. Saving wasn't just financial advice, it was moral guidance. Governments reinforced it. Posters urged citizens to save for the future. Banks ran ads showing smiling families watching their balances grow. To deposit money was to join the nation's progress. To withdraw too soon was to betray it. Then came the 1970s. The illusion shattered. In Britain, inflation reached over 20%. In Italy, the lira crumbled until its smallest coins were abandoned. In the United States, a dollar in 1970 bought less than 50 cents worth of goods by decade's end. The people who had done everything right, who had resisted greed, who had obeyed every rule, watched their savings dissolve. Their virtue was punished, not rewarded. Inflation became the invisible thief of the responsible. And the generation that followed took note. They would not trust paper promises again. They would build their wealth on something solid, something no central banker could print. Or so they thought. If the grandparents' era was about saving, the parents' was about owning. The home became the altar of the middle class. Mortgage brochures replaced savings pamphlets. Governments encouraged home ownership as the cornerstone of citizenship. Owning property was not just an investment, it was identity. A man's home is his castle, they said, forgetting that the castle was often mortgaged to the hilt. In Spain, Ireland, and Britain, cranes filled the skyline. The sound of drills and concrete became the soundtrack of progress. The logic was simple. Land is finite. People need houses. Prices only go up. But homes are not pure assets. They are living liabilities. Mortgages bind decades of income to fluctuating interest rates. Maintenance, taxes, and insurance devour more every year. Yet the illusion held until 2008. When the crash came, it was biblical. Spain's boom towns turned into ghost cities. In Ireland, entire suburbs stood half-built, their developers bankrupt. In the U.S., foreclosure signs sprouted like weeds. Families who did everything right were evicted by the very system that told them ownership was safety. The mantra, "real estate never loses value," died overnight. And as markets burned, a new gospel arose, preached not in banks or churches, but on screens and apps. Don't save. Don't just own. Invest. The modern generation was born into volatility. They watched their parents' mortgages drown in debt and decided they would not repeat that mistake. So they turned to markets, Digital, global, infinite. Cash was trash, they were told. Investing was freedom. Let your money work for you. It sounded empowering. It also sounded new. Stocks, crypto, ETFs, NFTs, the alphabet soup of modern hope. Social media turned investing into entertainment, influencers into profits. The new dream wasn't security, it was independence. Retire by 30, live off dividends. Make your money compound. But in this age, the boundary between investing and gambling vanished. Algorithms replaced advisors. Risk became invisible. And when 2022 arrived, the illusion cracked. Crypto collapsed by $2 trillion. Pension funds faced liquidity crises after years of chasing yield through complex derivatives. Even safe systems like the Dutch retirement funds quietly trimmed benefits. The reality hit hard. When the cycle breaks, risk doesn't disappear. It simply rolls downhill. The elites hedge, the small investor bleeds. And once again, a generation that believed it was smarter than the last discovered that the system had simply updated the packaging. Safety had become speculation in disguise. Every era promises prosperity for the many and delivers it to the few. The formula is ancient. Inflate. Bubble. Crash. Extract. Rome debased its silver coins until farmers bartered grain because money lost meaning. Weimar Germany printed marks until savings turned to ash. Greece, in 2008, gutted pensions to repay foreign creditors. Different centuries. Same mechanism. Each cycle begins with the illusion of abundance. Money multiplied faster than reality can support. Then comes the panic, when that illusion collapses, and those closest to the source of creation, emperors, bankers, politicians, quietly convert their claims into tangible assets. The public, too late to react, bears the cost. Inflation is not an accident, it's a transfer. Bubbles are not failures, they are harvests. And every time, the story is sold as progress. Your grandparents lost to inflation. Your parents lost to real estate collapse. You lose to algorithmic volatility. The cycle survives because it adapts faster than memory. The system doesn't evolve, it rotates the victims. And yet, in every collapse, there are survivors. They play a different game. The winners are never the ones chasing prices. They are the ones building tools, infrastructure, and essentials when everyone else chases dreams. During the California gold rush, Levi Strauss didn't dig for gold. He sold denim to miners. Samuel Brannan didn't pan the rivers. He sold shovels. They became millionaires while prospectors starved in the mud. During every boom, there are equivalents. The entrepreneurs who sell the picks and shovels of each era, the platforms, the data, the logistics, build enduring wealth while speculators gamble on outcomes. When property bubbles burst, construction magnates and landlords holding cash buy up assets at pennies. When markets crash, those who own productive businesses, farms, energy, factories, keep generating value because people still need to eat, move, and live. They understand a principle lost on most investors. Real wealth isn't abstract. It's functional. It produces. The system rewards builders because they don't depend on faith, they create it. In every generation, the few who understand that distinction escape the trap entirely. They don't play the game of chasing what others worship. They build the things others depend on. And in that independence lies freedom. Every generation thinks it's different because the technology changes. But the psychology never does. Then it was emperors debasing silver. Now it's central banks printing money. Then it was noble estates leveraged on grain taxes. Now it's global markets leveraged on derivatives. Then it was the Pope selling indulgences for salvation. Now it's financial advisors selling diversification for peace of mind. The language evolves, but the mechanism doesn't. Wealth is siphoned upward through trust. The crowd believes in coins, in houses, in ETFs, and that belief funds the empire above them. When inflation hits, governments call it temporary. When property bubbles form, economists call it demand. When markets melt, they call it a correction. Each phrase disguises the same event. A system resetting the scoreboard to zero for ordinary people, while those closest to power quietly reload. The numbers get bigger, trillions instead of millions, but the moral equation stays the same. The empire of debt continues, only now it's global, digital, and almost beautiful in its design. A credit card swipe in New York ripples through servers in London, Shanghai, and Zurich. The illusion has gone planetary. But here's the irony. The closer money gets to becoming pure abstraction, the more valuable reality becomes. Land that feeds, skills that produce, businesses that solve real problems. These are the last refuges in an economy built on promises. Because when faith collapses, and it always does, the world rushes back to whoever still holds something real. The recurring mistake isn't ignorance. It's trust. We trust that the system which failed our parents will somehow protect us. We trust that experts can manage what emperors and kings never could. Infinite promises backed by finite reality. We trust that someone else's rules will reward our discipline. But every generation learns the same brutal truth. The system adapts faster than you do. It sells safety but profits from volatility. It tells you to work, save, buy, and invest, and each command transfers risk one layer down the pyramid. The only escape is to stop playing their game. Real wealth is not numbers. It's capability. It's assets that produce even when markets freeze. A skill that can't be outsourced. A business that solves an essential problem. A piece of land that feeds you. A trade that earns value regardless of currency. These aren't glamorous paths, but they are durable ones. The system exploits predictability. It thrives on those who obey the same advice. The moment you build something real, something that doesn't depend on financial illusion, you step outside the trap. History doesn't repeat itself because people forget. It repeats because systems remember how profitable forgetting can be. Break that cycle, and you don't just protect yourself. You reclaim time, purpose, and freedom. Picture 3 photographs side by side. A grandfather counting coins at a kitchen table. A father holding the deed to his house. A son checking stock prices on a glowing screen. 3 faces. 3 eras. One unbroken chain of belief that safety could be bought, stored, or traded. But look closer, and you'll see the same expression in all 3. Hope mixed with fear. Because deep down, every generation senses the fragility beneath the promise. The system doesn't need to fool everyone forever. It just needs to make each new generation believe it's immune. That's how the trap resets. And the only way out is not to play, but to build something that lasts beyond the cycle. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.